Lusso Italiano, Luxury Imports sponsors Boxing Bros UK.
To go. Oh yeah, sure. Hi guys, Andrew here from Boxing Bros UK with Raheem, the legend, been in the game for years. So, what did you think? Well, we just started with the event so far. What were your kind of highlights?
The highlight for me is seeing 5 promoters of significant promotion companies at the top table. This is something that the youngest era will not know the novelty of. It was a thing that you would never see earlier in my days, and by earlier, I mean 5 years ago, right? Much less 10 years ago. And 15 years ago, you'd be laughed out of the room for even suggesting to see 3 promoters at the table. It was hard enough to get 2. So what we are living through right now is the platinum era of boxing. Everybody asks about the golden age. Well, I think we've embarked on the platinum era. And this is something that really should be cherished. And those old heads, you know, it doesn't mean that you're an old person, but that you have enough time in the game to appreciate what you're looking at. What we're seeing right now is something we've never seen the likes of before.
Well, it's unprecedented, isn't it? I mean, we're not old enough to have experienced the 70s, that kind of golden era, but we lived through the 90s, do you think this is kind of, would you go as far as to say this is potentially the best era of boxing, just in terms of the scope of it?
This guy coming this way.
Oh, right, sorry. Just in terms of the scope and where we're at with Saudi and Turkey al-Sheikh.
Listen, every era has its own charm, right? There's something about it that defines it. What this era is defined by is the entirety of the boxing world actually coming together. We know that the UFC has been a huge rival for the attention of young fans and for the excitement of boxing fans. Even those who would consider themselves purists, they have to admit that the UFC puts on exciting cards. There are big parties at the bars. There's a reason why they've been so successful. It's because you get the fights you want when you want them, and losing a fight doesn't write you off as career-wise. And so I believe because the competition is so strong that what they've said at the top table today is true, that we're looking at 50-50 fights all the way down the card. You won't be punished as you would have been in your career earlier by getting a loss. It will be down to how you perform on the night. And that's how it should be. You can lose a fight on your medal, on your shield, get up there and do a great performance and still not come away with the victory, but people want to see you again. People want to see those fights made constantly. That's what we're coming to in the boxing game, and that's what we've been waiting for a very long time.
Losing your own isn't such a big deal anymore, is it? If you put on a good performance, as you say, you can come again, and Turkey likes that.
Losing is always a big deal, but it's not the only thing that matters anymore.
The be-all and end-all.
Even that isn't the only thing that makes your career valuable. But yes, don't get me wrong, this is a fight game for winners, and losing is not something any of these guys want to do. It just means that the fans don't write you off when it happens.
So we're from Chatham in Kent. We've got a local lad near us called Moses Atoma. You know, the next king potentially of the heavyweight division. Do you think it's too soon to talk about him in that kind of scope, or how do you see him? How do you see his career progressing?
He's an exciting fighter. He is up and coming. He hasn't fought for a world title yet, which means he certainly hasn't become one. I'm a man that says the results write your ticket, and right now we want to see him in major fights and have that prospect tested. He's certainly an exciting guy. He could do great things, but he hasn't done them yet, and until he does, I don't think we can use words like great or certainly not accomplished, but exciting. Great potential. If you want to put great in front of a word, it has to be potential.
And I think the pressure, for me, for us personally, we always feel like there's too much pressure to beat that Tyson record. That's what keeps being spoken about. Do you think he needs to be progressed the right way? Do you think maybe
Tyson record?
The youngest ever heavyweight champion?
Listen, I don't think that's something that is important. You got to be heavyweight champion or any champion when you're ready. Like if you're ready at 16, then okay. Then if that makes you the youngest, then so be it. But I don't think that's a number that any fighter should be chasing. You want that title shot when you're ready, and also you have to be ready to be champion. The hardest thing about winning a title is keeping a title, and the maturity that it requires for you to be a champion, and what that means not only to the fans but to the boxing world globally. So I don't think we need to be chasing chasing youth, we need to be chasing excellence.
Yeah. Well said. So just a final couple of questions. For you, just personally as a fan, who would you say your top 3 fighters of all time, if you could pick 3? It's a hard question, I know.
It's not as hard as it sounds, really. Roy Jones Jr., Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler.
That's cheating. That's
not as hard as it sounds, because you can pick any 3 and put them in different orders depending on the day, right? Jack Johnson, Muhammad Ali, of course, cannot go unnamed. Even Big George Foreman. I'm a big Frazier guy.
Way back.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are a collection of heavyweights and middleweights and cruiserweights and lightweights, and there's too many fights and too many different weight categories to pick 3 just over top all of them. And because what we were talking about is eras, they all have their unique thing that defines them when they fought.
Yeah.
So that's why it's an easy question, because I'm never going to answer it.
I think, would it be fair to say though, the pound for pound, it's got to be Sugar Ray Robinson though, isn't it?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I mean, look, the way fighters are fighting these days, you'll never see a 22-round fight. You'll never see fighters fighting 3 weeks in between. You'll never see anybody fighting as many times as he fought. But also, at that time, fighters were not the kind of athletes that they are now. It isn't the kind of competition that you have at this level of, I mean, yeah, you can fight so many times and fight so many fighters, but every fighter that anybody fought in that era was not an elite athlete necessarily. So it's just too different a time. In his time, for sure. But there's a case to be made for Roy Jones Jr. I mean, let's not forget how many weight divisions he climbed. He became heavyweight champion.
Oh, ridiculous.
This is something that can't be written off because he didn't fight
James Toney?
47 fights.
James
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, there's an argument to be made, but Sugar Ray Robinson is certainly an answer that you can stand on.
And a final question from me, because we were covering this on our channel. A lot of people are talking about comparing eras, and like you alluded to earlier, it's very difficult to compare eras. And we were talking about Usyk, like for us, he has to be in the conversation. For us personally, he's in the top 5 heavyweights of all time. But I see a lot of people out there saying, oh, but he wouldn't have beaten any of the greats of yesteryear, Larry Holmes, Lennox Lewis. How would he get past their jab? I think his IQ is good enough that he could adapt to anyone from any era. But it's so hard to have that conversation.
That's down to you to make that case. And every fighter that you mention is going to have somebody making their case.
Yeah.
You, in my opinion, can't compare eras, because boxing is called the sweet science for a reason, because there's a science to it. And for me, every fight is an experiment. There are 2 elements in that ring at that time that will never reoccur and have never occurred before. So in that moment, with those 2 elements, how they clash in the very moment they're clashing on that particular day defines who wins and who loses, defines the champion of that time. So we can't say what Lennox Lewis might do against a Usyk today, because it would be different than what it might have been in '93.
Yeah.
Those are 2 elements we'll never see clash, and you just have to accept that. And so if by your criteria, by your scientific analysis, Usyk is top 3 or number 1, then it's up for you as a scientist to make your case based on the elements. But the predictions can only be that, because we will never really know. In fact, in all of those fights up there, not a single person in this room or a single person watching actually knows what's going to happen. Not the fighters, not the promoters, not their trainers, none of these analysts. Nobody actually knows. And anybody who tells you that they do is chatting shit.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Radio Raheem.
Boxing Bros UK. I'm one of them. Be one of them yourself.
Cheers for the plug. Thank you very much.